So our final panel of the conference is a personal favorite of mine. It's titled Arabs Advancing Technologies. The Arab world is usually seen as a catch-up region in terms of technology. However, our panelists here present a different case than the one the media usually portrays. How can institutions and individuals pave the way to a brighter, more science and tech-based future for the Arab world? Laureen Meroueh will be moderating this panel. For those of you who haven't heard her SciTech talk, Laureen is an energy entrepreneur and a doctoral candidate at MIT in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. At MIT, she has developed an energy storage solution that can be adapted internationally, for which she is now launching a startup to drive the global impact possible by this technology. The panelists who will be joining her are Dr. Ahmed Omran, who is a postdoctoral researcher at Harvard University, Dr. Fadel Adib, who is an assistant professor at MIT and the founding director of the Signal Kinetics Lab, Dr. Aoude, the CEO of Derq, an MIT spin-off with a mission to eliminate road accidents for both conventional and autonomous vehicles, and Dr. Malak Abedalthagafi, the director of the Saudi Human Genome Satellites Lab at the King Fahd Medical City. So you have 4 doctors and a doctor to be on this panel. I'll leave it up to Laureen and the speakers to fully introduce themselves and dive into the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So to begin, let's start with the young Arabs in the world. What is it that's missing from the educational system, if you think anything, that really promotes science, technology, and engineering, and innovation within those 3 sectors? So for example, in Lebanon, the high schools don't have many hands-on courses and laboratories. It's more very fundamental and rigorous. Could that have any impact on their career path? So this is open discussion. Talk all at once or one at a time.
So I have one thought about this. Particularly in Egypt, this is a big issue, that there is very little orientation when it comes to students choosing their college majors. So they enroll in programs and they actually don't know what they're signing up for. Number one. Number two, they're not actually encouraged to do what they're passionate about, and rather do what can get them a good job and high income later on. So you're either a doctor or an engineer, but if you say, God forbid, you suggest, oh, I want to study science, I want to be an artist. And so lots of talent is being strangled because people are not encouraged to do what they're passionate about, but they're always being pushed towards, you have to get a good job, you have to get a high-paying salary. And I think this is a big problem.
Actually, before I start, I want to say that you guys have done an amazing effort at SciTech. I've been at MIT now for 6 years. I've seen a few previous SciTechs being organized. I have organized workshops and conferences myself, and you guys have done a better job than me as a professor. So I want to start by a huge round of applause for the organizing team. So you guys have done a wonderful job. This is definitely the first step towards, so I think that the first step towards a better education is more awareness, which is what you guys are starting to do now, and trying to get experts from everywhere in order to give folks feedback. One thing specifically about middle school and high school, I think that is lacking in general in the Arab world, is the international Olympiads. When I first came to MIT, I had no idea what an Olympiad does. So who here who is not from MIT who knows what an IMO or an IPO is? Okay, not from the... Okay, from Harvard, not from MIT or Harvard. So it was a very big thing. So IMOs and IPOs, these are international math, international physics, international chemistry, international computer informatics Olympiads, where students get trained in order for them to represent their nations. This is both a way for nation building and also a way for students to get very aggressive exposure. I mean, in Lebanon, there isn't like a school for the talented. School for me was torture. It was very boring. And I think it was, for a lot of us over here, it was very slowly moving. It's optimized towards the mean of the normal distribution. If you want to rise in society, then you need to also cater to the people who are 2, 3, 4, 6 standard deviations away. And in order for you to do that, you need to have specialized programs for them. So one of the things is, from my perspective, this starting these Olympiads, maybe you don't have to participate in international Olympiads. These takes like 5 years before a country can qualify, but establishing something of the order in Arab Mathematics Olympiad, Arab Physics Olympiad. If we do that, then these students who are aching for more things to do will have a path forward. And also you will be able to bring people together across new and exciting venues, which will create a source of pride for people both within the Arab world and also a pride for them as they go for top institutions around the world.
That also echoes on the fact that there's a program called Stars of Science in the Arab world. However, there aren't many like that, so why? Not only are those 10 students that are actually making it to the top of this program, they're not the only innovators, so we need to have more programs like that.
So, in terms of the programs, I would say Olympiad's a great idea, pushing people to the limit, getting them excited about science, math. Another, I think, need, probably won't answer directly your question, but another need is having more practical experience. So we focus a lot, let's take Lebanon as an example, I'm from Lebanon, on the theoretical aspect of learning. You know, it's all about getting the good grades, doing well in class to get into the top schools, especially in Lebanon. What we are missing and what we need to be more integrating into what the students are learning in school and in college is more practical experience working with companies. And that's obviously, you need two to tango, so you need more companies that are investing in colleges, in high school students. And we see that today, so we can talk a bit more about my startup in Dubai, but we're looking for students that are smart, but also have hands-on experience. And this hands-on experience can come from pushing the limit in Olympiads or working with big companies and learning those skills that you won't learn in class.
And they need you before they can have the experience, because you will give them the experience.
That's true.
So that's also to all of our partners here. Feel free to contact our high schoolers and get them involved. And for Dr. Malak, we'll actually start with you for this next question. Building off that, so they made it through high school, they made it through college, and they're in STEM. However, specifically for women, just because they made it through college, they're not able to find sustainable careers in the Middle East in STEM programs. And this isn't just a problem in the Middle East, also in the US. However, Saudi Arabia, for example, has done an even better job in promoting STEM amongst women through college. So what is the next step we need to take to move past college and through success in a career?
First, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me today. So you're right. I guess it's one of the examples that not being seen by, especially the West, and how many Arab women actually in the STEM field, and how much of them made it to the university and college degree. In some statistic, recently I was reading by NYU in Abu Dhabi, more than 50%, and some countries like college students in the STEM field are women. Even though this is actually more what in the US, for example, 20% or so in Europe, or even in Sweden or other Scandinavian countries. So we're doing great on telling girls to go and get education in STEM. However, after the graduation, we have retention challenge in keeping these girls in STEM-related careers. To start with, like the private sector really didn't make it very easy, especially the ones who work in STEM, who have the STEM sectors. They don't really make it easy for women to be part of their team. The environment is not very friendly in many places. I mean, they don't take into account the physiological changes that women have to run through during their lifetime. The other thing is, example one myself, although I'm not an entrepreneur by any means, but just happened when I came back to Saudi Arabia 2.5 years ago. And I wanted to start this startup, and nobody was really wanting to seed fund or give any money to this high-risk biotech company. So I had to come back to Silicon Valley to get funded. So I finally go back there. So it really, sometimes as somebody in science, you feel, okay, Mina woman get a lot of attention about how they're influencing the political, the social movement. However, the Arab women in STEM, they're really not represented, and nobody's seen them for some reason. That's why I think they have a very difficulty to keep, even if they made it to the STEM job, they really have difficulty to advance. They're stuck in a junior mid-career. It's rarely to find anybody in the leadership or corporate board level. There is no Arab country putting any legal code for women to be in any corporate, for example. And this is very sad. And I think it's making it difficult for younger generation to even get into this. Because I don't see any senior actually can be their advocate and talk to them. And lastly, just I guess the mentorship. It's just lacking to advance women's career in any STEM field.
So I think mentorship is actually a very good point, to have females mentoring younger females and how to proceed on this path. So from you guys, can you think of any way that we can basically break this bias in which women won't be successful in STEM careers, or basically create a culture that allows the scientific entrepreneurship amongst women?
So just to start, my mentors were all women.
Great.
My PhD supervisor, her name is Mina Katabi. She is like a superstar. She's a woman. The department head who hired me at MIT was also a woman. So I've gotten a lot of mentorship from women.
You are a unique one.
Time to give back.
I don't know. I mean, this is always a question that I have for female students. It is, what can we do? Because I know my sister, so my mother is also a university professor. My sister is a medical doctor. I know what my sister goes through, and I know how people can be, like she was going through a pregnancy, and and she was at AUH, and people were like the people supervising her were very ignorant of what they have to go through. So this is more a question for females to give us feedback. How can we be helpful? I'm always asking this question. It's in the US, I think it is way more difficult to get females in STEM education. In my class in Aioub, we were 50-50, 50%, which I thought was amazing. Every single group that I was part of, and every single research group was also 50-50. It just ended up happening that way. So the question is for leaders and also for people in the audience to give us feedback on how we can be more helpful and how we can use our position to advance this, both in terms of mentorship for people back in the Arab world, as well as attracting people to keep moving forward.
And with that, if any of you in the audience have a comment on it, and even pertaining to the earlier discussion on education, please feel free to raise your hand and comment. We would be happy to hear from you. Yes?
So one way to go forward is to provide more role models, right? Female role models, to talk about them. And one way is to provide role models, talk about them. And you're talking about two female professors who were your mentors. And if we write those stories, so they become part of the narrative, part of the rhetoric, whether in the media. So if every one of us writes one story and publishes it in one way, one outlet, you increase the rhetoric and you showcase these women that are not visible. And so are the young children, as they grow up, they see them and they aspire to be them. I think that's one way.
Okay, I want to follow up. Keep this. What can I do more than for one? For example, I created the Wikipedia page for my advisor. She was actually a female Arab. I looked up to her. When I joined her group, people were saying, oh, she's like very aggressive, she works her students. I'm like, yes, I'm going to succeed if I actually do that. So what can we do more? More than
what
just...
can you do? What can you do?
I don't know.
It's us that we have to do, the women.
Yeah, you could write the story. We need to have more writers to write the stories, which get published, not just in magazines, but actually books and articles, and you know what I mean? So write your journal, write a diary of your life and how she impacted you. So it could be your story, but you're talking about her. And this is a call for the whole audience to write those stories in different ways and talk about them and make an effort in every panel you sit in every discussion, in every plane you sit in, to bring this up consciously, and that's how you turn the tide, by talking about it all the time.
Can I jump on that point by just pointing out, if you don't know Dr. Rana Dajani, she is an excellent role model to look up to, so. I'm being honest.
Another thing that you can all do directly is promote the females in your groups or your lives to leadership positions. So if you have a research group and you have a task you need someone to lead, you tell whichever girl is in your group, would you like to be the leader?
I can give a personal story. So my wife, Karine, is MIT and Harvard graduate. And I think from a personal perspective, supporting women is supporting your wives in achieving their ambitions. So she is a successful manager at McKinsey, and she's today organizing a big conference in Lebanon for Harvard. And I think personally, each of us, if we can support our close circle and enabling them to achieve their ambitions, this is probably what we can do immediately.
Can you hear from the female panel?
Yes.
So one of the things, as we mentioned, like the lack of mentorship, for example, how I move to the next step in my life, and how I advance in my career, I realized there is some obstacle. One of the things that made me decide, was lucky enough to keep the tie with Harvard when I decided to go back, just to have this access to my mentor to tell me what to do next. This was one thing was extremely lucky, and just go and figure it out yourself. It doesn't work all the time. Sometimes the decision maker have to take an action. And I think the legal quota just force people in the beginning. I'm not saying just take her because she's a woman. I'm take her because she has equal qualifications.
Yes, exactly.
That's what we want. I think we can promote, but at a certain level I don't know what to do with it. 10 years working in my life and how to promote them to the next level, because I don't have the power myself to do it.
This was wonderful. I'm glad we stayed so long talking about this part. So now we'll go on to more things. So,
Do you want to say something?
okay. We'll start with this question. Why do you think Arabs have garnered a bad rap when it comes to tech advancement, even when we see today there's so much representation?
I think it comes down to how we deal with research. So right now the ecosystem of entrepreneurship, of innovation, of industry is booming in certain parts of the Middle East and the Arab world, but we're not known for actually creating the knowledge. Like, we're not doing basic fundamental research that creates this knowledge upon which we can base all of these innovations, these inventions, all of this technology. We're always importing knowledge, we're processing it. We might build upon it, but we're not actually laying the foundations for any of it. That's my personal take on it. It's very underappreciated in the Arab world.
So how can we promote more fundamental research in the Arab world, basically? How can we show them that it's not just direct application tomorrow, but maybe we should spend more time on the more fundamental questions?
I think it requires a change of mindset, because we're always looking towards utility, immediate gains. What is my return on investment?
Well, I think
Right
that
now.
might stem though, because we're also seen as not the most developed countries. So we want to see what can we do right now to make us be at the top or next to the most developed countries.
Right, but if we ask ourselves why are these strong countries in the position that they are, it's because they had the capability to create knowledge, they had the capability to foster it, to build upon it, to build technologies that don't come out of nowhere. They come out of people figuratively and sometimes even literally just staring at the sky, trying to figure out how the world works. And it takes generations for this knowledge to become useful or practical, and the people who are doing this research don't know, or sometimes don't even care, what is the utility of what I'm doing. They're just doing this basic research in the hopes that at some point some smart engineer might use this insight, this knowledge, this information to make something that benefits mankind. And if not, well, at least we know better how the world works. And in the process of gaining that knowledge, we actually also develop new technologies that can benefit the world in other ways. So this is something that we just don't think about in the Middle East. We always want tangible results. We don't think very much in the really long term.
Right.
Like, how can what I'm doing right now benefit us in the next 40 years? We are thinking about, okay, how can it benefit me in the next year?
I have a comment here. So, in terms of creating technology in the Middle East rather than just importing, I think this is the big challenge. And the way to solve it So we're not just talking about the challenge, talking about solutions. I think is threefold. One is, as you mentioned before, embedding research in schools, in colleges and universities, so that we're not just learning, but actually innovating. Two is having R&D funding. So we are in Dubai. I launched Derq in 2016, and UAE is very supportive. They're giving us access to the roads. We have an MOU with the Road and Transport Authority. But if you go talk about funding, fundraising, no one wants to fund a deep technology companies. They want to fund companies that make money immediately. Everyone is used to having an ROI that's very clear. So I think having R&D funding, and the governments here can help by saying, like very neighboring countries in the Middle East, Singapore, even the US and Canada, there are funding that is allocated for R&D. And some of that goes to startup. And then third, I would say, but this is kind of the chicken and egg problem, but the third is success stories. And I think we're lucky now, things are turning around. We've seen some success stories. We have Kareem that is raising money, growing, attracting talent. We have Souk that was bought by Amazon. And big stories like this get people excited to go into companies that are creating technology. And hopefully, I think we're now at a turning point where more and more of young people are thinking of startups in the Middle East rather than joining big companies that are mainly consuming technologies.
I agree with you. Basic research is very shy in our world. I mean, again, problem from answering this in your first question, it comes from education. Even our universities, unfortunately, they really focus on applied research just to get academic promotion. Really, this is a mentality. And I can say 95% of the university in Arab world. Now we have new kind of universities now, like KAUS, for example, in Saudi Arabia, focus more on basic research, but really few professors already care about how to get published any paper to get promoted. This would be very difficult for you to be innovative anywhere. Second point, I agree with you on R&D funding, especially when it comes from private sector. I read once the OECD countries, for example, 63% of R&D come from private sectors. Our world is at 3%. So how you, if the private sector don't do their job in helping to invest in this company or deep learning or biotech, how we can go anywhere and to find that. Even in the US, we know there's a challenge also, not now in the Silicon Valley, but it apply in other parts of the country, even in LA. I remember when I was on my accelerator, the other company we were being accelerated, they were from LA, they have to move to San Francisco to get the fund. So it was just funny how the system actually doesn't work everywhere the same way that we hear about Silicon Valley.
Thank you.
Can you make a comment?
I suppose so.
I'll just yell, it's okay. Just to answer the question, another thought is that a lot of the companies in the Middle East, exactly the ones you stated, like Kareem and Souk, they tend to reproduce existing success stories rather than come up with their own. And I think that that's why there's this idea that supposedly Arabs and people from the Middle East don't innovate. And another thing is that a lot of the smart, very successful people that can make it to these big universities in the US, like MIT and things like that, tend to leave and eventually stay there in the US or in Europe or wherever they tend to study. And the rate at which people return and actually decide to start things in their home countries, especially in Lebanon, for example, where I'm from, I think is very minimal, and that's kind of, I wish it were higher, but it's not.
I agree with you. We are trying to be reverse that trend. So Derq, it's MIT spin-off, it's based on my PhD research at MIT. We filed a patent here after I graduated, worked here a few years later when the patent was ready. I was already in Dubai. I launched in Dubai. We're developing cutting-edge AI-based software for autonomous vehicles and smart cities. And we are so far been fortunate to attract people who, probably like you, are interested in doing exciting and cutting-edge technologies back in the Middle East. So I would say we are one story, hopefully a success story, and will be the first of many.
And thank you for that, honestly, because that's really what's needed back there. Is that people like you go and do that stuff, and not concentrate all their efforts outside of the region?
I think what you guys are doing here at SciTech and bringing media on board is actually a great start. I don't, like, when I was growing up also, I was looking for role models who are Arabs advancing technology, and it was very, very, very difficult to find Arabs advancing technology. And yesterday I was meeting with the Undersecretary of Education of Lebanon. He came, he wanted to visit my lab, and I realized that I am at fault. I should have also talked to people about the stuff that I've done. I mean, I met the President of the United States who was interested in my research, but I haven't, like when people invite me to go back to Lebanon, I'm like, no, actually I have so much. So it is also on us. I'm surprised, for example, that I didn't know about Munzer Dahle before I came to MIT. He's very senior, he's done amazing things here within MIT. How come we do not know about all of these people? And I think some engagement with the media is extremely important in order for us. There are a lot of Arabs. The head of department at Stanford Electrical Engineering is Egyptian. How come we don't know these stories? And how come it takes me to become like a PhD student on the job market to find that out? You know? So this engagement, going back and engaging with the public, and the reason why as academics we don't do this is because in academia there's this thought that, oh, we want to live in like our own castles and do research and focus on the things that matter. But the things that matter is also society and projecting ourselves into society. So I think it's a little bit on us as well.
We need to make sure we sustain connections with the people back in our countries and here, and connect them to whatever we found here, and give them the same opportunities that we've been able to find ourselves. So, I think we can go for another question as well. So, you guys can pick, do the honors. Okay, we'll go with the second one since we haven't touched on government yet. When governments tend to repress certain aspects of tech advancement, how can we overcome that? Or enable governments to see they are making a mistake?
I don't know how to answer your question. This is a difficult question because a lot of the Arab governments are actually turning around and advancing tech. Okay. This is how I see it. Actually, I feel that a lot of the Gulf countries have their hearts in the right places. What really needs to happen is to raise more awareness for these governments and make them realize that this, if they actually have a lot of advancements in tech, then this is something that they can boast about. And a lot of I think the Gulf countries are quite leading at this stage, and that is why you see a huge amount of investment in like universities like KAUST, in also a lot of universities in Qatar, the UAE. So I think it seems that they're moving towards the right place, but probably people who have spent more time there would have.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, they start to realize it's oil. I mean, you cannot really be dependent on it forever. So now, I'm sure you heard about this Vision 2030 and other programs. They're really trying to catch up, if you want. Yet there is a lot of obstacle because it's nice to write vision and try to advance and execute them, but still we have some bureaucracy that's a day-to-day thing, and how even to open a company and how to make it in 24 hours, for example, like Dubai, and how to not to go do all this paperwork and how to get the VC who can invest in your high risk. So there's a lot of things. So government, I mean, they play a major role, and I think Gulf countries are trying to catch up. I'm not sure about the rest of the Arab world, but I also think the collaboration, we're missing a lot of opportunities not working together as in trying to advance technology at one Arab pool. This is another area that is missing with a lot of talents all over.
So maybe to represent the rest of the Arab world, which is not where governments are not jumping on advancing tech. So I think repression comes from fear of change, because people or governments can be afraid of change, or they're afraid of what they don't understand. And one way to combat this is just to spread public awareness, scientific literacy, make people understand that this disruptive change is good. We cannot allow the people who represent us to repress change for the sake of maintaining a status quo. So this might not be the case in the GCC, which is a good development, but in other parts of the Arab world it sadly is. Many stories from where I come from, where students are actively discouraged from pursuing some of their graduation project, particularly electrical engineers, because it's a security issue. And that's all they will be told about it. So I think public appreciation comes a long way, not only in combating this, but also in securing more funding for science and technology, for improving our education system, for encouraging young people to go out and follow what they're actually passionate about.
So it sounds like two major things here. One, we need better communication amongst everyone and ourselves and what's happening in our communities. And two, we need more money. So this has been a great discussion, and we don't have too much time left, but with the time we do have, it would be great if each of you could go and just say one thing that you'd like us all to learn from this and your insights. Whoever.
Okay, so one thing that I would like to advocate for is that science, natural science and basic research it's not a market economy, it's not something that should be profitable. It's the people who do science and the people who are entrepreneurs, innovators, inventors, those are two fundamentally different types of people. They have common traits, they need patience, they need perseverance, they need passion, but they have very different modes of operation. So a good entrepreneur is a person who believes in what they're doing, even if everyone else doesn't. And a good scientist is a person who always casts doubt on their own work, even if nobody else does. And that's how it's always been, that's how it needs to be, just from the nature of how the scientific endeavor is and how the entrepreneurial endeavor is. And we're not doing ourselves a favor by trying to cast these two things into one mold. We can bridge gaps, we can help scientists capitalize on their ideas if they need to, if they have a very good idea that's relevant for technology, allow them to do that. But we also need to be mindful about what it is to conduct science, conduct basic research, how to fund it, how to deal with it, how to appreciate the returns that we get from it, and that it's very different from what we usually think about in terms of return on investment and so on in a financial sense. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, my one point is that I'm very optimistic, actually. I didn't expect that I would be saying that, but I think I don't think the Arab Spring failed. I think the Arab Spring succeeded in making us start thinking in new and different ways. I think I'm very optimistic because of this, what people here were able to do this year in SciTech. I'm very optimistic because 50% of the audience is male and female over here. This is way, way higher than the technical conferences that I go to. I'm very optimistic because like Aziz, who joined as a freshman at MIT when I was a graduate student, went back and is trying to, he was the panelist in the previous panel, and is trying to change the world. That George, who was a PhD student, graduating by the time that I joined MIT, is also going back and trying to change the Arab world. So I didn't expect that I would be optimistic, but I'm very optimistic about our future. So.
Yeah, I'm optimistic too. That's why, at least I like to think I am. That's why I'm back. I think the easiest, it's easy to talk, and it's probably hard to do things. And we can do our job by trying and by going back. It's probably a good time to be in the Middle East. There are examples like our company. We are hiring top talent. Obviously MIT would be our preference, being an MIT graduate. We're hiring scientists, engineers to do exciting work. And it's not going back and selling, like people think, engineers go and start becoming salesmen and saleswomen. We are, developing, and there are other companies, and we welcome you to talk to us if you're interested, or go back and try your own thing. It wasn't easy when we started. As I mentioned earlier, the fundraising spent 6-7 months. We said we have a great team, patents, MIT work, but people are used to apps that make money. Now I think things are changing. There are angel investors. We had people like Fadel Adib who invested in us, who are trying to also make these changes and make this change happen. So I invite you to go back and try, whether joining companies like us or having your own ventures. I think it's a great time to be back.
Thank you.
I think motivation is a dark matter of education. We can find a way to have our kids from elementary schools to just get interested in STEM. Not too late, even in high school. We just have to start from the beginning. Now I know some people said, oh, how we can do this with all this instability and security issue we have? How we want these little kids to feel just they can make it even to go to school? So I believe science will not solve any political issue we have in our world, but I think science policy will help us to solve problems related to environmental, healthcare, energy, research, all of these things that cross borders. It doesn't only stay in one country, but that it affects us all, water, research, all of these things. So I think working together, trying to share resources, have this pool of talent working together, even investment or giving even working, let's try to work to collaborate through science. Maybe this actually will improve our diplomatic ties with each other in the Arab world. Will actually make us move forward all together instead of just every country focusing on their issue and we really share it all and it's not sitting in one border.
Thank you all to the panelists and the moderator. And I think that one thing all the organizers want to get out of this is that we want you to promote Arab scientists, not just to other Arabs, but promote them to your colleagues who are American, who are Chinese, who are European, because we are at the caliber, as you can see here, as scientists who are Chinese and European and American. And so to promote Arab scientists at that level, I think is also key in advancing technologies and helping increase the reputation of Arab scientists around the world.
So just to follow up, I think at the caliber is a little bit of an underestimation. I think we have so much resilience. We've gone through way more in order for us to come to where we are. I'm sure that a lot of us have either lived through a war or suffered through a huge amount of political instability, and despite all of that, we were able to reach where we were able to achieve. So we have way more.
Yes, completely agree. Well, thank you all for this panel and this panelist. Thank you.